Okay,
Oh, okay.
Ah,
Always
There
say
you go.
goodbye. Oh,
there we go.
And there's
Oh,
Henry. Nice to see you, Henry. Henry, where are you?
Hmm.
You're you're
Awesome.
you're Boston. Okay. Well, we've got the two coasts. That's good. We got a lot of the center. We won't call for a vote. That you can do in November. All right, we're a few minutes after 2 o'clock. I know a few more people have said they're coming, including Fred Endelman. I just want to say that it's wonderful. There are so many old folks, and I mean long tenured folks, and so
Yeah.
many next generation
correction.
folks. And
uh-huh.
we will have another chance where we can talk to each other. But now, if everybody could mute their microphones, we would like to introduce our new rabbi, Rabbi Ahuva. And actually, I will let Rabbi introduce ourselves and say a few words because we're having a new year. Rabbi Ahuva.
Thank you, Bonnie. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Perfect. Well, I know many of you by having met you in person. I know some of you by name, and some of you I have not yet met at all. And this is an incredible format, and kudos to the people that originated this, 2, 3 years ago?
4.
4 years ago? Um,
But last
the
year we had an anniversary party instead. So this is
Okay.
like,
So, life is always a mixed bag, right? And I think the origin of doing this format was the pandemic. So kind of I don't like the idea of silver
Oh,
linings, but it gave rise to innovation to try to figure out how to deal with difficult circumstances. And this year is for the Jewish people and for the Jewish adjacent people, kind of a difficult year. Um, but uh, but again, we continue with the sorrow and joy, all of the mixed blessings, um, and we remain grateful to be alive. And it's amazing to have this kind of an opportunity to be together. So we go forward in
hey,
just a few days
Ladino.
into the new year,
No, Aldo good.
57, the new
David,
year, 5785. And so I wish all of us a happy and a healthy and a sweet new year. Shana Tova U'Metuka. Thank you.
Gamani.
okay. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is, I mentioned we didn't have a Zoom last year because we had an 80th anniversary party. And as a result of that party, many of you couldn't make it. And so we have a memory book that is finally published. And we're going to have
Yeah.
a preview of that book. Ronnie Bogart and Ronnie, is Julie here? I didn't see her, but you can introduce the star players of that memory book. And I'm going to share my screen so we can see that memory book.
okay.
If everybody will just,
Well, while she's sharing the screen, and it looks like it's about to come up, I'm going to talk just a little bit about this memory book. So after the wonderful weekend that we had in September last year for the 80th, and Bonnie was leading that team of incredible people that brought us all together and made it so meaningful. After it was over, we had all these great pictures, many of whom were taken by Bonnie's husband, Roy, and several other people. We did share them digitally, but I have found when there's something really, really important, it is so nice to have a print copy of a little
Get
photo,
it?
something you can just leave out on the table and then pick it up and
Right.
look at it
Can't get the
anytime.
camera. Can't get me on there.
So Bonnie and I, as well as Julie Kinder McMillan, and many of you probably know Julie because she has been working with us on Holocaust education. In fact, she's been teaching Holocaust education at Robertsville for over probably 25 years, but also helped us teach our interfaith Holocaust class She's an amazing person, amazing teacher. She's not feeling well today, so I'm not expecting her to be able to get on. But on the side, she's a photographer and she's part of a company that digitizes your photos and tapes and makes these memory books. So the three of us together created a memory book that you're seeing on your screen. And what we tried to do was include things that would help highlight so much of what was important about that weekend. So you can keep going, Bonnie. I think it should.
Yep, it's going.
You're,
Tell
you're
me
seeing
when
the
to
front.
stop it.
Okay, cool. It should be okay. Yeah, so you're seeing, so the front cover was white, as you could see, and it's capturing the tree of life, starting with, and also including things like tributes. There was the mayoral proclamation that we saw, the gala program, and also the Power Tee. Judy Gray did a great job designing our t-shirts. In fact, several of us are wearing them today, and we're hoping to do a whole nother purchase of maybe wintertime. We're going backwards. There we go. Okay. So it started on a Thursday night, us welcoming people to the community. And then Friday night, we had that wonderful Friday night service with the pillars and the oneg. And we tried to identify people as well as we can in the photographs. And art was also a big center of this. Jeanette has just done a great job with the different art that we've been able to display as well as sell, but it was the centerpiece of part of that weekend as well. And you can keep going. There you go. This is some of the art. And then we also had our wonderful Saturday night gala. And you're already seeing Fran of good memory, loving memory there, along with the art. And and we tried to identify people in the pictures so that everybody would be able to know who's there. So we're into the gala of people having such a great time, and it really captures the joy of who was there and the families. Just absolutely wonderful. And then you saw us not only getting to be with friends that we might not have seen in a while, but dancing. Was the dancing amazing that weekend? If you got to be here, and the singing, I think we're going to get to hear a song today too. We had the tree planting, and I've tried to keep those oak leaf hydrangeas alive in spite of our drought and then intense rain. They are still alive. We also capture in the book memories, things that people wrote in from various places to give us tributes. And you can't read, you're not going to take the time to read them on the screen now, but from various different people, including Judy Rahman and Gail Glasser. I know Benno's family also sent in some things. So these are now preserved for us. And as we come to the end, we see this, our t-shirts along with Bonnie and Eileen, and we wanted to give a little tribute to Julie Kinder McMillan. So this book, what I decided to do, and you can end the recording now and take it off the screen. What we're doing is we went ahead and ordered some preliminary copies, and some of those I'm donating to some of the people who are shut in, so not able to get out. We've also got getting ready to order another set. I'm approximating that at least 20 people would want to get a copy of this book. I've already paid for them. So I'll ask you to, if you do want one of these, that we will get it to you. And then I just ask that you turn around and make a $20 donation to the synagogue instead of paying me. That would be much more meaningful. So we'll let you know as soon as the new books come in, and you can tell me, you can send me a message anytime and let me know that that you want to have one of those, and we'll make sure we order enough for as many people who want them.
And Judy Gray says she wants to make an announcement. I assume, well, go ahead, Judy.
Hi. I am sitting here wishing you all a happy new year. I wanted to let you know, since I'm in charge of buying for Synagogue Shop, that we have received 8 lovely talit sets, because it's been a big request for people to have these. So I hope you can see this. Can you see that?
Yes.
And I wanted to let people know that I've got these available because I thought that perhaps people would want them before the new year starts for services. So I know this is not good for the folks who are out of town, but for those of you who are local, that would be, I'm happy to meet you. I'm happy if you want to call me. My number is 865-803-3205, and I can post that. So anyway, I'm here in town before the services start at the end of the week, and wants that. I also have a couple of other things. These things kind of came in late, so that's why I'm sort of running around like a chicken. But anyway, I have a couple of lovely apple honey bowls, one with a cover, one without, that are really pretty, that could be used on your private tables.
Okay, Judy.
So that's it.
Yeah, great. Okay. Because we need to get right into the next agenda item, which is the really wonderful thing that we do every year, and that is to have memory and tribute to pillars of our congregation. Can everybody see the PowerPoint that says 2025 J-Core Pillars?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, because I'm having a little trouble as to which screen I'm showing. And so this year we have 3 pillars. It is the 4th year that we've done pillars. And our thinking is these are people who have left us, but not in spirit. They're people who have made wonderful contributions to both the congregation and also to the bigger outside Oak Ridge community. And you'll see this in all of the tributes that are being paid to pillars. And so with that, I'm going to turn over to the first pillar, if I can get it going, to Shirley Blumberg. And to pay tribute to Shirley, we have Debbie Odell, who is, in each case, we have someone from the family and then someone from the congregation. So Debbie Odell will start as a family representative and bring in whoever, and then Linda Roberts as a member of the congregation.
Well, I know all these people.
Okay, great. Go ahead, Debbie, you're on.
Okay, so I'm actually, I like Deb Odell now, but born Deborah Blumberg, Deborah Lynn Blumberg. Okay, so I'm going to talk about Shirley. While Shirley Blumberg became a Hadassah leader, her earlier life in Oak Ridge was with the women of the Oak Ridge Synagogue, the Sisterhood, and Hadassah. Of course, the women not only prepared the Shabbos service refreshments, but in general served up lots of food for every holiday and bar and bat mitzvah. It was with food that the congregation women provided life and love for family in the community. Now, given there were only 2 not so good restaurants in Oak Ridge at the period during that time, women provided most, if not all, family food. And while Shirley also had a passion for art, gardening, and fashion, for Shirley, food was her way of showing love. Everyone may know Shirley for her cheesecakes, which were in demand at bake sales. Her other specialty cakes included chocolate pound cake and grasshopper pie. And I have to admit, after eating her poppy seed and prune Humentaschen, I have been disappointed for the last 50 years by the store Humentaschen that you can get at Kroger's nowadays. At home, she made dishes from the old country with her mom, Pearl, being from Russia. Shirley was known for her chopped liver, but I remember and loved the kasha varnishkas, the noodle kugel, the blintzes, and the grievels. At Pesach, there was the matzo ball soup, for which several women in our community were known for the best matzo balls. But of course, my favorite Pesach dish to this day continues to be matzah brai. Now, Shirley would annually bring back bagels from Miami. We took an annual trip to Miami to see Pearl every year. And over 60 years ago, Shirley would bring back bagels and onion rye bread. And they were, of course, you couldn't get them outside of stores in Miami and New York. But then, of course, I also remember that if you did not eat that bagel within 2 minutes of its preparation, it became a bagel rock. The Oak Ridge Jewish community offered connection, family, and community for Shirley and Bob Blumberg. This community and the women in this synagogue gave Shirley the footing and foundation for her career. And when Hadassah took over sponsorship of Young Judea, Shirley encouraged and supported involvement by Oak Ridge Jewish youth in Young Judea. Many, including her kids, Shelley, David, and Deb, went on to spend a year in Israel after high school through Young Judea. And when the Young Judean kibbutz Keturah was established in Israel, Shirley regularly visited and encouraged many of those who had made Aliyah to Keturah. When Bob and Shirley moved away from Oak Ridge to Maryland, they did not find a Jewish community like the one they left in Oak Ridge. Fortunately, Oak Ridgers Linda and Mike Roberts, Linda who will speak next, who had moved to Maryland earlier, provided family and friendship. But Shirley also had to create a Jewish life and purpose, which she did by becoming even more involved in Hadassah, working in the DC area and then commuting to work at the national office in New York. Shirley became a Hadassah representative to the World Jewish Congress, attending many of their meetings and traveling to Israel. Her dedication and belief in Zionism had a positive impact. Her zeal for her volunteer work in the Oak Ridge Synagogue in Hadassah is a testament of her love for the Jewish people, Jewish culture, and Israel. I want to read the following words of Hadassah that for me help to explain Shirley's dedication and heart. Hadassah, the power to heal our world. Together, we believe we can and must do all we can to advance justice and healing. We've been defying the odds for more than a century, creating new
Are you
leadership
still
roles,
trying to get it?
creating new leadership roles for women.
Because I can't get my picture on here. Don't go off
Sustaining-
onto something else, Phil. Try to get that.
Okay,
I'm
we
waiting
need
for
to
you.
mute whoever is yelling now.
Okay, so Hadassah is saying we've been defying the odds for more than a century, creating new leadership roles for women, sustaining a vibrant Jewish state, and paving the way for a pioneering healthcare system that saves lives every day. We are the power of women who do. So I want to thank you and pass the torch over to Linda Roberts.
Okay, Linda.
Thank you. Thank you, Debbie. And hello to everyone. It is just marvelous to see you all after all these years. And let me talk very briefly about Shirley and our friendship. Shirley was at our door the very first week we came to Oak Ridge, and we were living in the garden apartments. And I should tell you, it was a great, wonderful relief to see her, because just 30 minutes before her visit, I had a visit from some pastor in a church who knocked on the door. And when I told him we were Jewish and that, thank you, but goodbye, he looked at me and he said, well, I've never met a Jewess before, a Jewess. But anyway, there was Shirley. And typical Shirley, she came right in, she sat down, she talked about Oak Ridge, about the synagogue, about the community. And the first thing she did was to invite us very Friday night Shabbat dinner and to go to services at the synagogue. I should also tell you, within a couple of weeks, she also somehow convinced the two of us to become the advisors for the youth group, something we were totally unprepared to do. But I will tell you that first week, that first visit, was the beginning of a friendship that spanned more than 50 years, first in Oak Ridge and then in Washington, D.C., where Shirley and Bob, for us, luckily, lived only 10 minutes from our home. We celebrated the Jewish holidays together. We cooked together. I was always learning from an expert. we shared a love of art and design, and especially pottery. And Shirley got us to know Charles Counts and Hugh Bailey, and their work is still in our home and always, always a reminder of Shirley. But most of all, when I think about Shirley, she was a role model for me and a role model for many, many other young women in Oak Ridge, in Hadassah, and across the United States. She was a role model for finding and following your passion and for making a difference in the world through your career, your volunteer work, your participation in the life of your community and in the synagogue, and for me, at the highest levels of government, with policymakers and leaders. She taught me how to be ruthless and not afraid of doing things and taking risks and running programs that, in my wildest dreams, I couldn't have thought of doing. But most of all, Shirley was there for me and for so many others.
Thank you, Linda. And I am going to take the prerogative to let Jeanette say a few words because she asked me in advance. And then at the end of the 3 pillars, anyone else who would like to make any other contributions will be welcome. Jeanette, unmute. Are you unmuting, Jeanette?
She can't hear you.
My twin? Yeah, she can. She's figuring it out.
Oh,
Okay. Oh,
There
can
she
you
is.
see me? Okay. I'm going to be even much, much briefer. This is, to me, this is Shirley. Do you see Hadassah magazine? That's Shirley. Her whole heart, her whole being was giving to Israel and to the medical organization, the Jewish Zionist organization. And whenever Shirley was out of town, oh, she's in Israel. We all knew that. But anyway, a real short plug. If you're not a member of Hadassah now, new members here, please join. They need you now more than ever. My entire family, I've made members, so I want to say that. Now, I was not close to Shirley as a close friend, as Linda just said, but I remember the exact same situation when we first moved to Oak Ridge. First, Mira got a hold of us for Shabbat dinner, and then it was Shirley. Not only once, but 2 and 3 times. Shabbat, come on over. I mean, she had an open heart, an open mind, an open arms. She just made you feel like you're her friend and you're part of the Jewish community and you're going to always be a great, important here. So that made me feel so good. And let me see what else I wrote down. Yeah, like Debbie said, her daughter, she could cook, she could bake, she could serve, all of those things, and plan a meeting and a new event for the congregation, all at the same time. She was multitasker. She was a real powerhouse. And, the women today, I mean, I suggested Shirley and who did we do? We did Ruth Carey, and then we've got Fran we're doing. All these women were exactly the same type of ruach to make the congregation and make themselves circle around new people. And that's why we had such a wonderful community. Women like we have today, like Ronnie and Bonnie and Becky and Hillary. All these women are going to continue to make us great. And so I wish everyone a Shana Tova, and please join Hadassah. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to have to charge for people making advertisements on this thing.
all right.
Well, you see the pictures, some other pictures of Shirley, and you see all the elements that were mentioned. And there's another precursor. You see in the upper right-hand corner is Paul Ebert. of the Oak Ridge Playhouse Theater thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Keep that in your mind as we go on, because our next tribute, our next pillar is Milt Carey. And to pay tribute, we have Annie Liebert, a granddaughter. His daughter, Ellen, is on, so she'll be cheering Annie on. And then Alice Feldman, and Carol Placille is in Florida, so she didn't make it, but she left a few words. And Henry, you're here, aren't you? And you could say a word or two. Yeah. I have them all written down in case people didn't make it. So let's start with Annie. Annie? Unmute.
I did. Okay, here I am. Milton Carey was born in May 1914. His parents immigrated to the U.S. from a shtetl in Ukraine, and he grew up in the Bronx, New York. He came to Knoxville during the Great Depression, where he met and married my grandmother, Ruth, and together with my mom, they moved to Oak Ridge when everything was a secret. He worked at the K-25 plant during the Manhattan Project and later at the Y-12 plant. They were founding members of the Jewish congregation of Oak Ridge and even helped build the shul in the early 50s. My grandfather was active in the Oak Ridge community. In 30 years, he appeared in 24 plays at the Oak Ridge Playhouse, including Barefoot in the Park, Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, The Sunshine Boys, and his favorite role was Nathan Detroit in Guys and Dolls. He was a member of the Oak Ridge Symphony Orchestra for several years. He was a regular reader at the Center for Recording of the Blind. These are some basic facts about my grandfather that illustrate someone who contributed to and helped to build a new community. And that's why we're talking about him today. But this list of accomplishments doesn't describe the Zadie that I knew. The mere mention of the name Milton Carey elicits an instant smile on the face of anyone who knew him. And that's a lot of people. We were greeted by so many friends wherever we went in Oak Ridge. When I was a kid, I thought my grandparents were famous. Zadie was the most positive individual you could ever meet. And that positivity rubbed off on everyone around him. He was always smiling or laughing. And he had a special laugh that made us all laugh even harder than we were laughing in the first place. We could always find Zadie in the middle of any party telling a story or singing a song that my bubby wrote for the occasion. He was game for anything, and he performed all acts with great expression and special flair. He was a wonderful dancer, and he could twirl Bubby over his head like a helicopter. Guests nicknamed them Fred and Ginger at my wedding. My grandfather was a singularly unique person. He had his own way of doing everything. He was a snappy dresser, and he had a jaunty walk, and he liked to stay healthy. And the first thing he would do in his daily routine was his exercises. My sister Sharon and I would follow him around the house, imitating his movements as he jogged around, doing jumping jacks, reaching for the ceiling and touching our toes while singing songs or repeating funny phrases. Looking back now, I'm pretty sure he invented those exercises. Zadie's other favorite way of exercise was walking. He was proud to report that, weather permitting, he would walk almost every day at the UT Arboretum, that he had walked further than the circumference of the earth. Zadie loved life, and he loved his friends and family, and we all knew that by the way he expressed himself and lived his life with generosity and kindness and positivity and zeal. Every night we were together, Bubby would tell us an original bedtime story. And Zadie would come in the room and say goodnight, telling us how important it was to go to sleep because tomorrow was a big day. We were always going somewhere and doing something fun, and whether we were going to play on the rocks in Gatlinburg or going to Disney World the first week it opened, or a family reunion with 100 cousins, or just an afternoon at the pool, every day was a big day with Zadie and was involved.
Thank you. Thank you. You'll notice that the picture we got is a very flattering picture of Milt Carey and the thespian. And so now I'd like to turn it over to Alice Feldman, and following Alice, Henry Feldman will have a short thing, and Karen Brunner had a little thought to add to that. Okay, you're on, Alice. Are you unmuted? Alice?
Okay, got me now?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. I'm so delighted to be with all of you virtually. I wrote some notes out, and I probably won't follow them because I'd rather just talk very briefly about Milton. And my siblings and my parents were best friends with Ruth and Milton, and Annie and her sister often talked about how they thought we were cousins biologically, although we weren't. But Ruth and Milton were the first people my father met when he came down to Oak Ridge to work on the Manhattan Project. And they met him in his a role as a Jewish GI, and they pretty much adopted him. And then my mother too, when she came down after the secret was out. And I am one of 5 Feldman siblings, and Henry is watching us now, I think. And one of my favorite memories of Ruth and Milton was that in addition to the many, many times we shared dinners with each other and went on all these expeditions that Annie was talking about, or some of the same ones, they would come over to our house, usually for dinner, I think, every Hanukkah. And Milton would started his role as Reb Hanukkah. And he would dress up in a bow tie, and he would wear a Mogen David made out of blue construction paper on his chin. And he and Ruth would read one of her famous poems, and Ruth would bring one of her poems, and Milton would usually be the narrator, and he would always narrate the poems with such great panache and flair. And they would hand out these little tchotchkes to us that we thought were just the best things since sliced bread. We thought they were fabulously expensive gifts, but we loved them. And we always had something to eat. And, although Ruth and Milton each had their separate talents and activities, as you all know, Milton being in so many plays and doing recording for the blind, and Ruthie being the Playhouse photographer, we knew them as Aunt Ruth and Uncle Milty, and we loved them so much. We shared so many times together, lots and lots of happy times and some hard times too. And so Ruthie would always, probably almost all of you had Ruthie write songs or poems for bar mitzvahs and weddings and other occasions of your children and grandchildren. But Ruthie would always, and when she'd come to a birthday party or a Reb Hanukkah event or something, she would always write a poem in the car on the way there, one of her fabulous poems. And when she got there, Milton would read it, or she'd already have an album made for the person's wedding by the next day. Just amazing. And and as Annie mentioned, Milton was infamous for his unbelievably wonderful laugh. It just made you laugh with delight and love every time you'd hear him, and I can still hear him laughing. And one final thing, if you any of you who attended the Amen dinners we used to have at the shul every year, where the food was cooked and served by the men of the congregation, you'll remember Milton's role as one of the tuxedo-clad waiters. He performed the role with panache. He was a natural. And I will pass this on to other people. I have a lifetime's worth of memories of Ruth and Milton to share, but I will pass it on to the next person.
And the
Thank
next
you.
one is your brother, Henry.
Yes. Okay. Oh, hi, Henry.
Thank you, Alice, and thank you, Annie, too. I'm surprised we're not all weeping right at the moment,
Well,
but I'll try to resist. I wrote out a short memory. Perhaps many of you remember in the 1950s and the 1960s, the Bema of our synagogue became the off-Broadway stage of the Oak Ridge Community Theater, because the Ladies Auxiliary sponsored every year a play on a Jewish theme. For example, Tevye and His Daughters, or The 10th Man. Milton was a mainstay of these shows. There was always a part for him. He played a variety of vivid characters. In a play by Behrman called The Cold Wind and the Warm, he was the flamboyant neighbor, Norbert Mandel, who was selling the Prudential insurance. And the way he said, "At the Prudential behind you, you have a big rock," just brought down the house. In 1961, the play was a boarding house drama by the Oak Ridge journalist and author Dot DeCamp, an original titled Solitary in a House. Milton played an elderly doctor, a less flamboyant role than ordinarily, and the landlady was Shirley Blumberg. And as a matter of fact, I was in this play myself, playing the teenage son, of course. There were a couple other times that I shared a stage with Milton. Art Dworkin will remember Julius Caesar. He was Brutus. Milton was the soothsayer. And it shivered your bones to hear him say, "Beware the Ides of March." I also was in the Oak Ridge Symphony Orchestra along with Milton. I was the last trumpet. You've heard of last trumpet. Now, that was me. I played the last chair in the trumpet section. He was in the back row of the violins. So essentially we were next to each other. And there were certain very difficult passages when he used an unusual violin technique, playing with his bow an inch above the strings so as not to make a mistake. I'll end with my earliest memory of the Oak Ridge Jewish congregation. I must have been 4 years old. There was no synagogue building. Services were Friday night at the chapel on the hill to everybody in the room. And I remember Milton Carey leading the singing of Yizkor at the end of the Friday night service. So, who is next?
So, Karen, on the theme of comedy and theater, did you want to state your memory? I have it written, but if you'd like to say it, please do.
Oh, sure. Lashana Tova, everybody. Henry, you kind of stole my thunder.
I'm sorry.
Because I thought I would be the first to let the Rabbi Ahuva know that the Bima had been a stage for many years at what was then called the Bethel Center. And my memory, before I get to that, yes, Nathan Detroit. I believe, if my memory serves, I was stage manager of that production, so I really had an opportunity to really watch Milty play the hell out of Nathan Detroit. He was awesome. One of the things that really helped me with this memory, for anybody who's visiting back at JCOR, please stop into the library, because my task during the 80th anniversary celebration was I was asked to put together a scrapbook of what I call the arts at JCOR, and it's still in the library. It's photos and reviews and newspaper clippings and all kinds of things about the arts at JCOR, particularly the theater. But the one I remember most, and Blanche, you're in this too, but was a play by Dot DeCamp called Be Haste to Be Kind. And Milty was my father, and Blanche, you were my mother. And my other distinct memory of that play, because it was something that my teenage character dreaded, and my teenage Karen thought that might also be absolutely horrible was I was destined to go to this, it was 1930s Atlantic City, New Jersey. And my character, young character, was destined to go to Slippery Rock State Teachers College, which is now Slippery Rock University, but at the time that's what it was, a teachers college. So yes, indeed, I have wonderful, wonderful dear memories of Milt and his theatricality just doesn't even begin to say what he was. He was a true original, and knowing him was a treat to all who did. So thank you for an opportunity to give him the honor that he so richly deserves.
Thank you. And I'm just going to quickly read something Carol Placille sent in case the storm kept her away. Is Karen on? Did anybody, Carol Placille? If not, I'm going to quickly go through it because it has a great ending. We had great fun with Ruth and Milton. We went through Oak Ridge Playhouse in '65 where Milt was on demand for lots of acting roles and Ruthie was the photographer. We were in several plays together. I can remember his great act and a funny thing happened on the way to the forum. Milt loved the stage and was a great actor, enjoyed many post-theater BYOB parties at a private, not an after-party thing at my house, maybe in the 90s. He spoke with a man who he didn't know. Everyone was wondering who he was, who he came with. When he saw the man going upstairs, he realized something was amiss. Finally, they found out he had Alzheimer's, and the police came and took him back to his family. The man had wandered away from his home. He saw the lights and he came in. Milt always performed his hilarious suit joke. I'm surprised nobody else talked about his suit joke. It was a mainstay. And he always did something at the social climbing post-dinner. The social climbers was a group that went up to Mount LeConte, and they called themselves the Social Climbers. But here's the Secret City story that entails a special encounter between me and Milt, me, Carol, and Milt on stage. We were in a play about the then quite conservative New York State Legislature. This was an off-way production, not in the regular Playhouse series, a studio theater production. I played the only female legislator, now just think about this, who had presented and was promoting a bill to help women. The all-male legislators were reluctant to support the legislation. The character that Milt played said he'd vote for me if he could cop a feel. And she smiles and said, I was young then. My character finally consented, so there we were on the Playhouse stage, playing it again, Sam. And so I wanted to show a picture that is the iconic picture of the building of the synagogue. And you can see Ruth left front, Milt rear back. And then here, the Solitary in a House, an annual production. And we mentioned we have Shirley, we have Robert Blumberg, we have Henry Feldman, we have Milt Carey, and other luminaries of the time. Okay, and now we will go to Fran Silver, our third, not least, of our pillars this year. And Chaya, her daughter, will give the family overview with however she arranged this. And then Blanche Dresner is going to say a few words as a friend. Okay, Chaya?
You're still muted.
That's the third generation talking to the second generation about technology. Mom, you're still muted.
This happens all the time. First of all, thank you so much for honoring my mother in this way. There are very few things that my mother loved as much as the Jewish congregation of Oak Ridge. My mother was a force of nature. She had the unique ability to bring the dreams and hopes of people from an idea to reality. She brought this amazing energy and vision to organizations all over the city of Oak Ridge, including Head Start in Scarborough, the Playhouse, ORCMA, and the Housing Commission, to name a few. The Visitors Bureau, and on and on. For Mom, the Jewish congregation of Oak Ridge was her second home and sometimes her first. At J-Corps, she was devoted to the creation of a school for the children of the community, and some of you on this Zoom were her students. My mother had the ability to be friends with anyone of any age. For some Oak Ridge teens, Fran was the trusted confidant. She listened with a full and open heart and gave advice that was meaningful and came from a place of love. My mother served on the J-Corps board of directors in almost every single role except facilities chair, because this was always Bob Blumberg's job, including board president more than once. Fran was an essential mover and shaker for the annual Bethel Jewish Food Fair. I remember sitting on the floor in the old kitchen, not upstairs, downstairs, where there's a library where it doesn't belong, while dozens of stuffed cabbage rolls were made, packaged, and frozen. At home, Mom would turn the kitchen into a blintz factory. I have tried many times to make the blutlach, the crepes, the way she did, and I cannot duplicate that recipe. Franny never met a stranger and was quick to invite any synagogue newcomer to our home for Shabbat and for holiday meals. My mother always said that our house had rubber walls and would fit all who needed a place to land. There were years when there were more than 28 people sitting at tables for Passover in our living room. And in the days leading up to the first Seder, my mother would meet someone new who didn't have a place to go for Pesach and invite them to join us. My father would moan and kvetch that we couldn't fit in one more person, and somehow Mom and Dad always seemed to be able to make it work. My mother was an autodidact. She loved learning. She was the best person to talk to about a movie, a book, a play, or a symphony. She really knew what she was talking about, and when she didn't, she would make up something that always sounded really good. Mom loved to talk with people who were smart and articulate. She had strong opinions, but was always willing to consider a new point of view, especially if it was presented with wit, insight, and passion. Mom loved politics and was fierce when it came to working for social justice, racial equality, women's rights, and the rights of children. My mother was a proud Zionist, and I know she struggled greatly since October 7th. She watched firsthand the protest in Boston and was brokenhearted at the unfolding of events because, as she said, she danced when Israel declared its independence. We owe it to her memory to work for peace. Of the many roles my mother excelled in, I think the thing she did better than anything else was to be a bubby to my 3 children. My mother knew that since we all didn't live in the same area, she had to be a long-distance bubby, and boy, did she ever. She sent postcards from all her travels, holiday treats from Hamantaschen and challah, and mandelbread on holidays. My mother called as phones got easier. She called every single grandchild every single Shabbat, and I would get called last and told who she had reached, who she hadn't, and who she expected to hear from next. I have been, I hope, impacted by the way my mother has shown love, in the way I hope to be a bubby, or as my kids say, savta, to my grandchildren. I think many of us had that since my mother's passing was just in June, many of us have had the opportunity to reminisce and talk about her. I still feel her presence. I know that she will be missed sitting house right towards the front in the congregation on Shabbat and on holidays. My mother loved it and expected other people to step up and make things happen. So to all of you who have loved her, have held her close to your hearts, I know that we will honor her memory by rolling up our sleeves and getting things done. And as I said, my mother's starring role was her work as a bubby. And so I'll turn this over now to my very first child and Bubby's first grandchild, my daughter, Emma.
Oh, that was good. It's tough to follow that, but I'll try. She really was kind of the best Bubby of all time. I remember her telling me every opportunity that she could of the story of when I was very, very little, probably firstborn, and she carefully carried me down the stairs of our Michigan house. And she said that she watched every single step so that she didn't trip and fall while she was carrying me down this flight of stairs. Um, I never doubted how big she loved me, and it was vast. Um, and she was always my go-to person to call with good news if you wanted someone to be just about as excited as you were, if not more excited for something. She would be the top of the list. She was always incredibly supportive. And I miss her every day. I miss her every day.
Also a beautiful member of our family, Art. I asked Art if Art would say a few words about my mom. I don't know where you are. Ah, there you are.
Unmute.
Well, here we go. Sorry. Haya and Emma covered almost everything. Her legacy in Haya and the three grandchildren shows how great she could pass down all her wonderful traits, because they're all wonderful people. A few things to say. She introduced the JCOR to synagogues throughout the South. When she was in important positions in sisterhood, she traveled all over the South, mostly by herself, which probably frightened a lot of people on the road, because her driving didn't live up to everything else in her life. But those people got to know JCR, and there were a lot of honors that came after that. And another thing that amazed me, she taught in religious school at JCOR, and through the years, whenever these young people would come back to town, they would come to see Fran. I never saw anything like that. And they would talk for hours, remembering the old times and all the advice that she had given her. Well, Fran was a wonderful person, and I miss her terribly. That's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Art. And Blanche, did you want to say a few things?
Well, not too much was left. Haya, you did a beautiful job of memorializing your mother. And the kids did the same. And all I have to say about Fran, I wanted to say, why did I consider her a pillar of the Jewish community? Because I think that's what this is all about. And I will say, I think I'm qualified because we were the first people, Larry and I, were the first people that Fran and Ernie met when they came to Oak Ridge. And it was very late at night, one night, and we got a knock on the door. It was about 1 a.m. And it was Ernie. And he said, my wife can't walk. She's not well. And we need a doctor. Can you recommend something? And we didn't know each other at all. And so I had met this one doctor coincidentally a week or so before when I did my sailor's dive into the swimming pool and bunked my head on the bottom of the pool and went to the emergency room. And it was Dr. Hy Rossman, another Jewish physician who is no longer with us, but the guy I called. And he was very nice. And he just said, she's probably dehydrated. And then he recommended ginger ale and a few, simple things. And she took it and she was fine afterwards. So that was Fran's first encounter with Oak Ridge and with me and with the community, primarily the Jewish community, fortunately, just coincidentally. And we got together that way. We became good friends. And we were good friends for a while until we started to do our own things. I was Jewish. Fran knew I was Jewish. In fact, it was because of Fran that I became involved with the Jewish community. I've always been Jewish. My family is very religious and Jewish. My mother and father were Jewish. My mother always said they used glass dishes, so it was okay. You could have them for both. And so we kept kosher in the sense I didn't buy kosher meat because there wasn't anything like that around me at the time. But anyway, so we complied with whatever rules we could comply with. And we did know each other. But then after a while, I had my children and Fran had her child, and we went our separate ways. Fran was in the domain of the congregation. Her first and foremost love was the Jewish congregation. And that's why I say I can.
Whoops, I think you froze. Let's see if we get her back. Blanche, can you unfreeze? Well, I'm afraid she's frozen. Okay, well, hopefully we can come back if she wants to say something more, but I did put this picture in. You've seen her before, but this is Fran, a wide opening for everyone. Her arms are out wide. We've spoken so much about her relationship to the Jewish community, but she embraced all communities and the Ministerial Association and everywhere else. And so I thought this was a great representation of Fran. So would anybody else like to say anything about Fran? And then we're going to open it up. I had a few things in the chat, which I couldn't deal with while we were going because I was listening to the speakers, but I know Annie had assembled some pictures. And if she would like to show those, I will stop sharing my screen and let her share her screen, and anybody else who wants to say anything. And while we're doing that, would anybody else like to add anything about Fran, assuming Blanche is not coming back? And okay, I see Eileen, and I'm going to stop sharing, let Annie share, and Eileen, you're on. Annie, I'm going to, can you share, Annie? If not,
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to share now.
Okay. Does it say you can? Are you permitted, or do I have to?
Yes. Can you see it? Okay. So I just put together just a couple of pictures. These are some early pictures of my grandparents and then my mom. This picture is from when he was actually bar mitzvahed in his 40s in the shul. And this is him being Reb Hanukkah. Here's him being my Zadie. This is him in Nathan Detroit, as Nathan Detroit in Guys and Dolls. Here's some of his plays that he was in. Here's the famous Copperfield picture. And this is probably from a family reunion where they're doing some kind of story or skit. This is the famous suit joke. And here's Zadie walking in the Arboretum, which he loved to do. And this is my favorite picture of the both of them. And that's my Zadie. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, Annie.
Thank you, Annie.
And one more thing, and that is Al wanted to say one thing about his role in the Manhattan Project. Go ahead, Al. These are coming in the chats, and then I'm going to open it up to anyone else who wants to talk about any of our pillars. Go ahead, Al.
Okay. Milton was a very humble person. He always wanted to be the sport. He always wanted to pay for stuff and show how generous he
Oh,
was.
nice.
But during the Manhattan Project,
Oops.
everything was a secret, and he kept his secrets about what he did to the day he died. He always said he hung out with all the brilliant scientists, he and Alice's father, Cy, and they went to all the big parties with Alvin Weinberg and Dick Smizer and anybody who was anybody. And Milton said he was not like all those brilliant scientists. He was more like an accountant. And so after he passed, since he kept the secret for his entire life, I ran into Mike London and I asked, do you know what Milton did? And he said he wasn't accounting for desks and pencils that were ordered. He was accounting for atoms of enriched uranium at the K-25 project.
Wow.
And which was a little bit more important. He also said that he talked to another uncle. He was my uncle, and my other uncle was a navigator flying in Europe, and he told Milton that he was going to get sent off to Japan to be a navigator on the other side. And Milton said, don't worry, you're not going there. Now, I take this to mean, and this is me making it up, but I take this to mean that Milton was one of the few people in Oak Ridge or on the planet who knew how much uranium was needed and knew that there was enough and something would be done to end the war and Uncle Irv would not have to go back overseas. So that's
Wow,
my story.
that's a really interesting story. Because I thought he was an accountant. There you go.
Yep,
There you
that
go.
was his story.
He was, Okay, well, anybody else? The floor is open. Karen raised her hand. Go ahead, Karen.
But let me just ask you a question, Bonnie. Did you hear what I said?
No, we didn't hear the end. We'll let you finish because you froze. So we'll come back
froze.
to you after Karen says something.
Okay.
Well, I just wanted to thank Kaya and Emma and the whole Silver family. I think everybody needs a second mother, especially when they lose theirs. And Fran was I know she considered herself my second mother, and I welcomed her in that role. So I miss her very much.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, Henry, did you just share your?
Yes, I just shared a picture. Everybody has seen that other construction picture, but this is another one from the same roll of film that I unearthed. Got the same people. You can get a little better view of Milton. There's Ruth and Arnold and Esther Kitsis, and that's Mo Bayless digging in the earth there. He was the real construction expert in that process.
Thank you, thank you. And I apologize for my messing up on the PowerPoint before, but Blanche, why don't you give the second half of your thinking?
Where was I even? Because I went on and gave the whole speech before I realized I wasn't on. I mean, I
Well,
just went on.
Make your dearest point.
My dearest point
Yeah,
was
the thing that's most
okay.
important.
Okay, I wanted to stress the point that Fran was definitely a pillar of our community, and she was a pillar for me, and she was the one who brought me, encouraged me to join the congregation and stay with it and work hard for it and have my own 4 kids, and things were good that way. But it was all her prodding, and not prodding, but encouraging. Prodding was it?
Pushing, shoving, nudging,
No.
Encouraging.
No, well, okay. Whatever you say.
I admire it. I admire it.
Well, I adored her. And there were years when we we're not out of touch. We just didn't see much of each other because we went in different ways. We went different avenues, and that was good. But to me, your mother was the epitome of a good friend. And we called each other sisters after a while. I said, you're my sister. We're not friends. We're sisters. And we touched base with each other almost every day. We made sure the other person was all right. Nothing was wrong. And what can I say? And that was it. But she was a pillar, and there is no question that as far as I'm concerned, she is the pillar of the congregation. Now, all the other people that you mentioned, I know them all. I think I have the honor now of maybe being the oldest female member of the congregation. And I remember all the things we used to do and used to cook, and I was always there. I was always a good volunteer. I worked full time, but had 4 kids, went to school, got advanced degrees, but I still, through it all, and because of the encouragement of one or so of my friends, continued on with the congregation. And I'm glad that I did.
Thank you, Blanche. And Rebecca, now Blanche, you are of Fran's generation. Rebecca is of the 3rd generation. So Rebecca, why don't you say something? And then I see Rabbi Ahuva would like to say something. So,
okay,
Rebecca.
Fran was everybody's bubby. She just was. I mean, and she spotted me when we showed up about 13 years ago, and we're really the fault of Fran and Eileen Handler. We showed up and with Katie and Terry, and they're like, "Yeah, I see you there." And Fran never stopped, And one other thing I would be remiss to not mention, Fran was amazingly fond of my husband. And for those of you who know Dennis, he's not the most liberal person in Oak Ridge, but Fran just adored him. She loved talking to him. She, is just, and it surprised him, but he was so fond of her too. And that was a adorable relationship that I loved watching.
Before I turn it over to Rabbi Ahuva, I will say something in common with all of these pillars, and that is they were so welcoming. The representatives said these were the people that when I first arrived in Oak Ridge, they were the people that welcomed me. And I think that's so true about our congregation, that the people are welcoming and our pillars just set the way all the time. So with that, Rabbi Ahuva, I think maybe you can close out this open discussion, and then we'll go on to a song in the DNA of the Carey Good family. So Rabbi Ahuva.
So actually, I was just going to say what you said, basically, Bonnie, about Fran. Of these 3 pillars, she was the one who I had the honor to meet and to get to know a little bit. And in particular, I remember before my wife and I had actually moved to Oak Ridge, it was requested that we come for the Hanukkah party to participate in that. And then my official start of work was January 1st. But during that visit, we were invited to a beautiful dinner at Fran's. I got to meet Fran and Art and Silver and Blanche and Larry, who I had met on online through our Hebrew class. Ronnie and Jim were there. Feels like some other nice and warm people as well. But I'll never forget being greeted at the door by Fran, who threw her arms around me and said, "We're so excited that you and your wife are here, and welcome, and we'll have many more Shabbat dinners together." So a wonderful woman, and kind of heartbreaking that I knew her for just a short period of time.
Thank you, Rabbi. And I just thought maybe you want to introduce your wife, Dale, because many of the people here don't know her.
Okay. Dale?
Her picture isn't up, so she's hiding,
Okay.
but she's here.
I see that Dale has unmuted. So Dale Rosenberg is my wife, and she is also known by many people, even in the short time that she's been here, as the most amazing educator. She's been teaching at Oracle, Oak Ridge Institute for Continued Learning, and has also started teaching at the here at JCOR Hebrew Aleph Bet. But she has a very loyal following in Oak Ridge among the Oracle students, and has very much enjoyed getting to know people. Dale, I don't know if you're able to say a few words, whether you can be on or off camera.
For some reason, my camera is not functioning. I'm not trying to hide. I've been loving this. I too was so fond of Fran, and I didn't know Milt or Shirley, but I feel like I'm starting to get to know them. And, it's just one of the wonderful things about this community is just how close-knit it is. And we have been welcomed so beautifully. And yeah, Fran and Art and Fran's granddaughter Silver were among the first to welcome us. And I'm so happy to be part of the community, and so happy to be part of this Pillars tribute.
Okay, last hand raised is Chaya, and then we're really going to go on. And at the end, if everybody wants to talk some more, we'll close out, but we'll leave the conversation going. Okay, Chaya.
Two things. To my siblings, the Blumbergs, I never see a hummingbird without thinking of your mom. So I wanted to share that. And in my family, there remains a tradition of writing a song or some sort of ode or poem for every special event. And Milt and Ruth, you had an enormous impact on that for me. And your blessing of creativity keeps going. And I'll never forget being dragged off to a corner in the middle of a party and having Ruthie say, "You can do this. You know the song. It goes like this." I don't know. But those were two little bits of luck I wanted to share.
Thank you. Thank you. And so finally, almost finally, we're going to have a song in the tradition of Ruthie and Milt from someone who has shares their DNA, and that's Al Good. Al, do you need to share a screen, or you're just going to do it? No, you're just good. Okay, you're muted. If you want to sing, you got to come off mute. I asked Al, after he did such a wonderful job at our 80th, if he could expand that to celebrate today. So Al is getting his guitar, I guess.
Yep.
Everybody put him on speaker so you can see him.
Yes, Bonnie asked me, she said I could plagiarize the song that I wrote for the 80th. So it starts like this. The year was 1943. General Groves built a secret city to end the war, his country's wish. He drafted scientists, mostly Jewish, be urged to gather in hopes to dive, and Dr. Bill Bernstein instilled till October, when the army built the chapel on the hill. 44, the first Jews to organize was Our Lady's Auxiliary. By 46, we started a Sunday school. Next year, we were a congregation formally. For $284, we bought our property. With our own hands, we built JCOR's home. Starting in 1950. But we never would have come to be without our Schul's pillars to lead. Today is when we honor three, Fran, Milton, and Shirley. For 70 years, Fran helped lead this shul. With Ernie, she helped expand our family pool. Their daughter, Chaya, added Silver and Amanda. Then Max had Eloise, who loved her great-grandma. Fran organized most every shul event, was a Hadassah maven and our president. Supported Ortma and Art Center, taught English to new immigrants. Of course, she did Sisterhood and Hadassah Women's League, called her a woman of valor. On the Interfaith Council, she built a bridge, guided the Housing Commission of Oak Ridge. She started Head Start in Scarborough, ran the meetings for Flag, whether for civil rights or Planned Parenthood. Her spirit never lacked. She passed service and tradition down to new folks to lead this shul and town. We in Art miss this woman of renown. Though 94, she left too soon. Milton came to Oak Ridge on day one and helped our country win the war. In the meantime, he helped found and build our home here at JCOR, starting 30 flex first on the field, but then at Playhouse he started while he enriched uranium. And in every Skinner play that his weekly wrote, he was MC and read her poems. Milton was known for his suit joke with all the necessary contortions. In his tux, he waited tables at the Amen feast, doling out correct portions. He walked so much in the arboretum, could have circled round the earth. His daughter Ellen, her girls Anne and Sharon, he loved ever since their birth. For the Goodstein and Feldman families, he would play Reb Hanukkah, giving presents to every boy and girl. His beard looked like a Jewish star. Shirley always was a giver. She showed her love, giving us chopped liver. With Sisterhood, she was cooking and washing, and serving poppy seed and prune home and caution. For her kasha varnish, 'cause you could die, and for dessert, grasshopper pie. But Shelley and David and Deb, her kids, were the apple of her. Hadassah here, her leadership was legion, and she even ran the southern region. Supporting Israel was her panacea. Sent her kids there with young Judea. Spent her life with Bob trying to heal the world, practicing tikkun olam. Help kids go to the kibbutz Keturah. Some even made Aliyah. As the landlady in Milton, she started to play. Folks asked for her photograph. And if somebody told a decent joke, no one could miss her laugh. So thank you for joining from far and near to celebrate our pillars for this year. And everyone who is here, thank God, I suppose. Thank you, Bonnie, and everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. That's great. I think we'd love the words and we'll make them available to anybody who wants them. They're wonderful words. Thank you, Al. Okay, well, I am going to ask Jim Bogart, the current president of JCOR, to say Shana Tova to everyone, but then I won't close the Zoom. So I see there's lots of conversations going on in the chat. And so we'll leave it open. And if people want to chat for a little longer, that's great. But we wanted to keep it to 90 minutes. And so far, so good. So Jim, you're on.
Welcome, everybody. I see that we have had up to, and for most of the time we've been together, about 42 people. So that's a very good turnout. So happy to see everybody. As Bonnie said, I'm currently trying to fill the huge shoes left behind by Fran as a former president of the congregation. I regret that I did not have the opportunity to know Shirley or Milt. I'm a relative newcomer. I've only been here about 30 years. So that's my great loss not to have known those two. But I definitely loved Fran. I'd like to thank Bonnie and Rebecca for hosting this Zoom Apples and Honey, and their team, Jeanette Gilbert, Henry Schrader, Moshe and Ilana Simantov. So thank you guys. This is great. And I wish everybody a Ketiva v'chatima tova. Very happy New Year. Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you, Jim. And thanks the members of the committee who particularly helped with choosing the pillars and things like that. It's something that you really need, diversity of opinion, and we had it, and it was great. And I'm going to send everybody off with a very happy New Year. Go eat your apples and dip it in honey. And I guess we can officially close the official part of the meeting, but keep it open for anyone who wants to unmute their mics and talk to each other and reminisce just a little bit more. So thank you all for coming, and you're all on. Go for it.
Don't all talk at once.
Just a word for me.
Thank you, Bonnie. Thank you, Bonnie, so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Okay, Mel, and someone who was just on?
I was trying to get a word in. Just much love and respect to both the Carey family and to the Silver family. I just have tremendous memories and felt that they were extensions of my own family many times, and can't say enough about these giants of the community.
Mm-hmm.
And what they meant to me as an individual and what they meant to all of us. So
Thank you, David.
I want to say hi to Eileen Handler. Hi,
Hi,
Eileen.
Eileen.
It's Patty. Good to see you. Oh, your mic is off.
Eileen, you're muted.
There you go. You did it.
Okay.
Hi.
Well, it's just wonderful seeing everybody. It really is tremendous. I really enjoy it. I don't know if you remember Sandra Plant, any of you?
Yes.
She lived in Oak Ridge for years. In fact, she only lived a few blocks away from me. And do you know, I never knew her in Oak Ridge, and now she's living in my apartment building.
Wow.
We're in
That's
St.
fantastic, right?
Yeah, and we were reminiscing and talking back and forth. Who do we know? You know, did you know so-and-so? Did you know so-and-so? You know, so it really is tremendous. And I just want to say a couple of words. I knew you all would do such a good job in reminiscing about the pillars, but to me, they were special people. Shirley and Fran and Myra and Mira, they taught me everything I know about cooking and something about the religion. And I have to thank Fran she was an organizer. And if not for her, I never would have been president of Sisterhood 3 times. She had a way of, hi there, Chaya. She had a way of making you know that you really could do the job. And I just, I never thought I could, but there it was. It was a wonderful life and a wonderful tradition from all the girls. And it was wonderful knowing Milt also. I'll let somebody else talk.
Well, I'm just gonna finish up, Eileen. I came a little bit later, not being born and raised here, and you were my pillar of the community here in Oak Ridge.
Good Lord, and you're still there, huh?
Yeah, it's good to see you. Happy New
Wonderful.
Year.
Same to you all. Lashana Tova.
And I will pay a tribute to Ronnie Bogart, because I never would have been in the board of directors of this synagogue if it weren't for Ronnie. She's someone, you say you never would have been chairman or president or everything. It takes people to convince you to do things. So I don't know if I'll say thank you, but I will. I will say that Ronnie really has stepped in the shoes of people to convince you to do things for JCOR.
And it was Fran who got me to be Sisterhood president too.
Oh, wait, me
And
too.
And it was Shirley Blumberg who got Barbara Hofstein to take over Hadassah. So we've all been, gathered in here and for the good.
Well, and Barbara came on. Thank you. Barbara's from you're in California still, right?
Yes, I am, for the last 40 years, and I can tell you, I still miss Oak Ridge. You guys are just a community that can't be beat. We have a nice life here in California. I'm remarried. My name is really Spiegel now. My husband Phil and I've been married 11 years, and we belong to 2 synagogues here, one Reform and one Conservative, and that's pretty common. And so we have a very rich life between the 2. That's for sure. But, the people you're talking about, they did the same thing for me. That's why I didn't speak, because you heard it all. I mean, they welcomed me like, and my mother had just died. So I'm a father too. So I was, pretty much feeling like an orphan. And Jeanette came knocking on my door. I think I was there one day. She had Nina on her arm, and I had Amy about the same age. And so we were just immediately fast friends, and we still are very, very close, dear friends, each one of us with a child in Israel and 3 kids for each child and everything that's going on there now. I don't need to repeat it, but, Oak Ridge has just wonderful memories for me. That community just, can't be beat. We've thrived in California. I love it. But you guys, you were the best. I mean, Fran and Shirley, and I didn't know Milt that well, although I knew Ruth. But these women just welcomed me in like like I was their daughter, and I needed that, and we loved it so much. And Mira too is exactly the same way. So the 3 of them plus Jeanette, I never had a moment of feeling like a newcomer in Oak Ridge, and it was a wonderful place to raise my daughters, and they have very fond memories and still very close friends in Oak Ridge too. So I'm so glad that you do this every year. I've got jet lag. We just came back from a big trip last night, but I didn't want to miss this. So Shana Tova to everyone, and just keep healthy.
Yeah, I wanted to say something to acknowledge Linda Roberts, because I don't think I've seen you since I was
Go
10,
out through the school wing.
since like I was 10 years old.
Oh,
And
okay. I'll go out through the back.
so I just wanted, I love this Jewish community, but I'll tell you, growing up, we took it for granted. We knew that there were wonderful people here, but we really didn't know how special they were. And I just want to apologize for how terrible I was when I was in Young Judea with you. Because, this is the time of year when you need to say you're sorry. And sorry, it's 60 years late. But I just want you to know I really did turn out okay. And I'm really, really pleased to get to see you on Zoom.
Wonderful to see.
Oh, I just want to say one word to Blanche. She was my daughter's, I don't know what grade you taught, but 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, I've forgotten, but she was so mischievous, She was really something. I remember one time you stopped me in the store and you said, "Oh, I'm so sorry your daughter broke her leg. Oh my God, we're trying to." I said, "What are you talking about? She didn't break anything. What are you talking about?" So she was going to school every day and made a cast that she put on at the bus stop. And she was getting out of it, doing everything. So I'm sure you don't remember it, but that was just hilarious. And I just wanted you to know she grew up and she's great. But she was so mischievous in those days and she was in your class.
Well, Blanche, I don't know if you remember how helpful you were to me when I joined the Oak Ridge school system, but I remember you just tutored me and told me how to get along with everybody and be successful. And, there are so many, the story of Oak Ridge is about people and community. And the biggest, I'm thinking the Hoffmans, the Silvers, the Blumbergs, the Handlers. I could go on. The Kimmelmans. Max was a babysitter for my kids. There just so many wonderful people who took us under their wing. And when we left Oak Ridge, I left very reluctantly. The two kids and I voted no, but Mike voted. We came to Washington, and the biggest shock was going into the supermarket and realizing there was nobody I knew. Whereas when I went for anything in Oak Ridge, there was always somebody there for us. And I hope the community, it feels like you're still as vibrant and as engaged. And I think that's wonderful. And it's very unique. It truly is a unique place. And I'm so glad it was part of our lives. It was a wonderful part of our lives.
We actually have a whole bunch of new members. It has been an amazing year.
Great.
So I see two people that I hadn't picked on before. One is Claire Robbins, who's also a third generation. And hi, Claire. You hadn't said anything. You're welcome to, but also want to acknowledge Fred Endelman joined us. And Fred and I are in touch every couple of years, whether we need to or not. I don't know if you came on in the beginning or not, Fred, but I hope you got a lot of the gist of it. So Claire or Fred, anything?
I'm not sure how can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, this has been a real pleasure and brought back some very nice memories. I tend to get choked up, so forgive me. And as I'm sitting here, Eileen, I don't know if you remember me, but I remember you. Yeah. And I just realized it is 51 years, almost to the day, that Wendy and I arrived at Oak Ridge in October of 1973 after I got finished grad school. And we really didn't have any specific plans about going to the synagogue. But that was the day of the Yom Kippur War.
Wow.
That Friday of my first week. And by golly, we were going to go to shul. So here we are walking in at Kol Nidre, complete strangers, and the whispering and, oh, who's that? Who's that? Who's that? Who is that guy? And his gorgeous wife. And we sat behind the Sturm family, and they adopted Wendy and me as their older children. And we so yeah,
time marches on.
Yeah, it does.
Fred, I don't know if you remember David, our David, but he loved you, and he always talked about you. And I don't know if you know this, but he named his cat Fred. And, and Fred.
I thought you were going to say his first son, and I was going to go.
And Fred lived for 18 years, and he was an amazing, amazing cat.
Now,
He was
Linda,
a Kimmelman cat. He came from the Kimmelmans.
Oh my goodness, that's where our first cat came from.
Yeah.
And 18 is my favorite number, and my sons, not as much as they used to, but make fun of me whenever I say, "Oh, boys, remember 18, L'chai," and so on and so forth.
Right.
Oh, dad. But 18 keeps on popping up in my life all the time.
Wonderful.
Much to my pleasure.
How old are your children now?
Oh, only 44, 45, and 46.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
They're young.
Well, there aren't many communities that could sit around and talk like this. People who don't really know each other well, always, and can talk about all the memories that they had as a unit. It's just, that's the part that amazes me, is how close a community we were. And believe me, I was here from not quite the beginning. I mean, Milt Carey and the ones that we've honored in the past. I was here when they were all here, but of course I was just a baby then. You know how that goes. But this was a wonderful place to come to. Although when I first came with my husband, I said, "Oh my God," came from New York. I said, 2 years, and then we got to go someplace else. Well, the 2 years have evolved to this. And
that was a popular refrain, Blanche.
That's
We're going
right.
to go for just a little while.
Right.
And you don't leave.
That's right. You don't leave. It was a wonderful place. It was a great place for the kids to grow up. They may not have done everything I wanted them to do the way I wanted them to do it, but all I can say, I've been very fortunate. Each of my kids were bar or bat mitzvah. So that much I've accomplished. Not that quite that successful with their children, but that's we need another 2 programs to go through that, because right now I've got 12 grandchildren and about 16 great-grandchildren. So I stay busy.
Okay.
Bonnie, thank you.
Okay, I don't know Kathy. Kathy, you look so familiar, but
thank you for mentioning me. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I am Eileen Handler's oldest daughter. And I wanted to say I was writing it down. Fred, we came in September, October 1963,
Right.
10 years before you. And our first service was Kol Nidra. And the Smileys, Ruth and Cy Smiley, invited us to their home. And I remember Cy saying, "This is the best night to invite somebody to your home because you don't have to serve them anything to eat."
Right.
And their
That was
son,
Cy.
Jeff, was a year older than I, and their daughter a year younger. And Jeff became like my big brother. He guided me through Oak Ridge High School because
Right.
I came from Illinois high school of 400 kids in 4 grades. And
Oh,
I got
wow.
hit in Oak Ridge as 1,503 grades. But Dad purposely chose Oak Ridge because of the educational system and that UT was affordable. So I came in my sophomore year. But what I wanted to add, it's so warm about the community and family. Now, my group were the Spectors, the Maskowitzes, and the Agrons.
Right.
And we are still in touch. So back from the 60s, this is like 2024. I'm
Right.
still in touch with members of those families as well.
Mhm.
So if anybody happens, I wanted to also mention, Mom
Great
is
memories.
98 years old. She'll be
Guadalajara.
99 January 11th. She is in Nashville, Tennessee. So if any of you happen to go to Nashville, I believe, is a Hadassah convention there this year in November? I'm a member of Hadassah through Oak Ridge, Knoxville, and I believe that is. So if you happen to go to that conference, anybody, keep my mom in mind because her door is open to everybody.
Right.
So thank you very much for recognizing. And Blanche, you may have been a substitute teacher or something. I'm trying to think. I know Mrs. Agron was, Eleanor Agron was a math substitute teacher when I went to Oak Ridge High School.
I was never a
don't know.
math teacher. That was my husband, not me.
But you were substitute teaching, right, before you went full-time?
No, I was substitute
Okay.
teaching at home with my 4 kids.
Okay.
So I stayed home for about 10 years until they got into school age. And when my last one went, that's when I started back to work, and I went back full time, but I was in special ed, and then
Okay,
I
that was it.
had the diagnostic center, and then I became a school psychologist.
So thank you all
Don't
for
let this-
continuing on. that family from 63 on, we're all part of one big family, and
Yeah.
the generations, you started something and the generations are still in touch.
Good.
Okay.
Good.
Mark?
I know there was a reunion last night, and I know my daughter Eva, and she had to leave early today, so she couldn't stay. But she and her husband, and they were telling me about David Blumberg and Alan
Yep.
Halberg and all the guys who went that they saw.
Absolutely, Blanche.
Right.
We
Yeah.
Eve and I got to spend some time with Gogo
Right.
as well, and
Yeah.
Alan was there. It was really wonderful. So,
Yeah. Oh, she had a terrific time, she said.
Okay.
So-
Is there anybody else who hasn't said anything that would like to say something?
No, I
Anybody-
always
anybody,
have.
Claire,
someone.
did you want to say something?
Thank you for making it available.
Okay. We will have a recording of all of this, so if you want to remember who you want to get in touch with after this.
No, Eileen, I'll get in touch with you.
There you go. There you go. Don't let this be the end. Let this be the beginning. Keep in touch. And if you know any other J-Corps genealogy people that you haven't seen here, but want to add for a future year, let's get that 4th generation in here. We'll figure out something to do that would be interesting to all the generations. Yeah, we'll look for somebody to lead it next year. Did Ronnie get off? Where'd she go? She's off.
Bonnie? Bonnie?
Oh, no, there
got
she
off
is. I see
quickly.
her. Yeah.
Bonnie?
Yeah.
She's here.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for putting this together and for bringing me into the fold. And you're a wonderful practitioner of one of my several words of wisdom to live by. If you don't water the flowers, they don't bloom. And you're a bloomer, kid.
Thank you.
That's right.
Thank you.
And a
That's-
waterer.
Good to
A waterer.
Well, it's a great community. I have one last request. Al, do you still want to do something if Annie can put up the pictures or, yeah?
Yeah, sure. If Annie can share her screen and share a picture of Milton's bar mitzvah, there's some explanation.
Oh,
that goes
God.
Okay,
Yeah, I remember.
you muted yourself, Al. You have to unmute.
Right. He's dressed as a kid, even though he's 40 or 50. And back then, you used to give presents to everybody. And the standard presents were wristwatches and fountain pens. So you can see he's got a dozen wristwatches on his arm. And
I'm sure.
Dressed as a little sailor boy or something. So that's all I had to say.
Okay.
Okay, guys.
Okay.
I am leaving for Italy tomorrow for a month and I need to pack.
Oh.
So I'm going to leave this opened until you all are talked out, but I'm going to step away. So keep talking and Shana Tova to everyone. And
safe travels,
we'll see you
Bonnie.
next year.
Yep.
That's great. We'll see you next
Next
year.
year.
Thank you all.
Bon voyage.
Shana
Bon
Tova.
voyage.
Shana
Bon
Tova.
voyage.
And safe
Bye-bye.
trips. Bye.
Shana Tova.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Wonderful to see you all.